Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to crochet Isabella the ice cream cone. With dollops of delight and sprinkles of sweetness, she's the snuggly friend that brings a scoop of joy to every day. This pattern, like all of the Kindness Company patterns, is a quick crochet, making it perfect for spreading crochet kindness. Isabella the ice cream can be made in sport, DK, or bulky weight yarn by adjusting your hook size. Today I'll be crocheting in worsted weight yarn and a 4mm crochet hook. If you haven't already, be sure to pick up the matching magical crochet greeting card to make an adorable gift that your friends and family will all love. All right, let's go ahead and get started.
Alright, so let's go ahead and get started on Isabella the Ice Cream Cones pattern, and we're going to begin with this brown color here for the cone. So to start, we need to form a magic ring, so let's review how to form a magic ring. Okay, so let's review how to tie a magic loop. So to start, we're going to get about 5 inches of our tail of our working yarn. And then we need to form a bit of a finger guns here with our left hand. And then we're going to lay that tail so that the tail part of it is down over the bottom digit of our left hand. And then we're going to take our thumb and pinch that tail so it's on securely to our index and our middle finger. Then we're going to take the working yarn, and that's the yarn that's attached to the ball of yarn, and we're going to wrap it around the back side of those two fingers really close to the top digit. So I'm just wrapping around the back. And then I'm going to continue by pulling it behind my thumb. So I just made a big loop around my fingers. Then we're going to wrap a second time, but this time we're going to go around the lower digit on the back side of our left hand. And then one last time we're going to push that working yarn behind our thumb on our left hand. Then when we've done that, we can take our crochet hook and we're going to flip our left hand over so we can see those two loops that we formed. And then taking our crochet hook underneath that top loop, we're going to use the hook to grab that bottom loop and pull it underneath the top loop. Then when we've done that, we're going to flip our hands back over away from our body. And then bring our hook and our left hand together. So you can see my fingers on my right hand are touching the back side of the hand with the loops on it. Then I'm going to take my right index finger and thumb, and I'm going to grab those loops that are on the back side of my hand. So the one on the hook and the one on my hand. Once I've got those pinched rather securely, I'm going to let go with my thumb and then slide all of those loops very carefully off of my hand. Once I've done that, you can see I have my tail. Again, that's not attached to the ball of yarn. And then my working yarn. I'm going to move my tail out of my way, kind of just swing it around clockwise to the 12 o'clock position. And then I'm going to grab my working yarn and begin tensioning it by laying it over my left index finger and then grabbing the remaining yarn with my pinky and my ring finger. Then we need to be able to tension our yarn, so we're going to have to let go with our right hand. But before we do, we need to make sure we're pinching the loop that we've tied and our tail together. So if you look, I like to kind of pinch so that it sandwiches that working yarn. So I'm just going to pinch both that loop and that tail together here. And then when I've done that, I can let go with my right hand, and pulling my index finger up lets me tighten that loop on my hook. Then to lock our magic loop or magic ring in place, we can yarn over and draw through the loop on our hook. And that locks everything in place. You can let go with your left hand. You can even stop tensioning if you want. This loop isn't going to go anywhere now that we've locked it in place. One last thing that I like to do before I get started is I'll take the tail. You can see it's sort of threaded through the loop that we've made. I like to take this tail and pull it out so that I can go ahead and get started placing single crochet inside. Before you begin, we also need to make sure we are working both in the loop and over the tail of the magic ring as well. All right, so we are ready to make our first single crochet stitch. All right, so I have my magic ring tied and ready to go. So we're ready to start in on round 1. So if you look up at the top left-hand corner here, you're going to see this is the pattern, and I've got it set so that it'll update as we are moving through. So you can of course look at the pattern itself, but if you would like to, you can just reference the top left-hand corner for all of the instructions. So you can see round 1, we need to put 6 single crochet or SC in our magic ring. So remember, when we're working in our magic ring, we're going to be working in both the ring itself and also over the tail that we use to form the magic ring. So let's go ahead and get started by placing our first single crochet stitch. We're going to take our hook and we're going to go from front to back through the magic ring and then also underneath the tail of the magic ring itself. Then to form our single crochet stitch, we're going to yarn under, meaning we're going to put the yarn under our hook. So you see I kind of flip it over to snag it. We're going to pull that yarn through and up into a nice loose loop. And then to close off our single crochet stitch, we're going to yarn over, meaning we're going to put the yarn over our hook and then pull that yarn straight through the 2 loops left on our hook. Then I also like to tighten this first single crochet stitch by grabbing it and pulling it over to the right. And we'll need to mark this first single crochet stitch too, as it's the first one in our round. Alright, so there's our first single crochet stitch. We need 6 total, so let's add another 5. We're going to go underneath the ring and the tail, yarn under and pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through both loops. So there's our second single crochet stitch. There's our third. Fourth. Fifth, and last one. So when you have all 6 stitches, and you can double check that you've got 6 stitches by counting, I kind of turn my work on the side and count the little V's, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we don't count this one here on our hook. Once you've got all 6 of those stitches, we're going to take the tail from our magic ring and pull to close that first round off. Alright, so for round 2, if you look at the top left, we have a new set of instructions, and we've got a new thing that we need to learn. So let me translate for you really fast. Those parentheses are telling us that we need to do everything inside of them in the order it appears from left to right. And then outside you'll see the multiplication sign and a number. In this case it's the number 3. That's telling us that we need to repeat everything in those parentheses 3 times total. And then that last parenthesis with the number, that's telling us how many stitches we're going to have when we finish this round. So let's take it in the order that it appears. First, we're going to take our stitch marker out of our first stitch so we can place that first single crochet. So I'm going to go from front to back through both sides of that little V here at the top of our stitch. Yarn under and draw up a loop. And then yarn over and draw through both. I need to mark this stitch as well, as it's the first of the round. And then if you look, the next part of our parentheses pattern is an INC. And an INC means an increase. And the way that we increase in single crochet is we're going to take the stitch from the previous round and we're going to place 2 single crochet stitches inside of it this round. So we're going to take our hook, we'll go through that next little V, the top of our next stitch, yarn under, drop a nice tall loop, then yarn over and draw through both. And then to finish our increase, we're going to go through that same space again. So the space that we just went through, we'll go through it a second time, yarn under and draw up a loop, then yarn over and draw through both. So if you look, you can see here's the stitch from last round, and we have two of these little V's coming out of it. So that's also one repetition of our parentheses pattern. We need to do that another 2 times because if you look on the outside it says times 3. We've just done it once. So let's do that same pattern again. 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch of the round, and then an increase in the next stitch, so there's our second repetition, and we're going to do it one more time. So 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch of the round, then an increase in the next stitch, and then if you look, we're supposed to have 9 stitches total, so you can count them by counting those little V's again. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So that wraps up round 2, and we're ready to move on to round 3. But before we do, I like to give my magic ringtail one final really tight tug, and then trim it short but not off. So I'm going to trim it maybe with like an inch hanging off the outside of my piece. That keeps it out of my way so it doesn't like get tangled up with what I'm working with. Alright, so we're ready for round 3 where we've got a new parentheses pattern to repeat. So we'll take our stitch marker out and we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches. So here's my first. And then 1 more single crochet in the next. And then an increase in the next stitch. And then we're going to repeat that sequence another 2 times for a total of 3 repetitions. So 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, increase, Alright, and that wraps up round 3. So for round 4, all we need to do is put 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 12 stitches from round 3. So that's just 1 single crochet in every stitch all the way around. Alright, so we're ready for round 5. We're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches. So there's my first. Of course, you want to mark that first stitch. There are my first 3, so then I'm going to increase in the next stitch. Then we're going to repeat that sequence another 2 times. Alright, so that wraps up round 5. Round 6, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. And then we're going to increase. And then just like before, we're going to repeat that sequence another 2 times. Alright, so for round 7, we just need to put 1 single crochet stitch in all 18 stitches from the last round. So that's just 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, round 8, we're going to start by putting one single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches of the round. And then increase in the next stitch. And we're going to repeat that sequence another 2 times for a total of 3 repetitions. Alright, so for round 9, all we need to do is put one single crochet stitch in each of the 21 stitches from round 8. So that's just one single crochet in every stitch all the way around. Alright, so that's round 9. We're ready for round 10, where we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 6 stitches of the round. Then we're going to follow that with an increase. And then just like before, we'll repeat that sequence another 2 times for a total of 3. Alright, so for round 11, all we need to do is put one single crochet stitch in all 24 stitches of the round. Alright, so we're ready for round 12, where we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 7 stitches of the round. And then increase in the next stitch. And then repeat that sequence another 2 times. Alright, and for round 13, all we need to do is put one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, so I'm here on my last stitch of round 13, and we need to change colors, so I need to actually change colors on this last stitch here. So to do the color change, we're going to make our last single crochet normally the first half of it. So we're going to go through our stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop. But then we need to draw through the last 2 loops on our hook in our new color, which is this light pink color for the ice cream. So we'll start our color change by cutting our brown yarn, and we're going to cut maybe 3 inches or so of it. We don't need a ton. And then we're going to take our new pink color, and I like to kind of make it so that the tail of this pink is about the same length as the brown that we're cutting. And then I'm going to wrap the pink around my hook and pull it through those last 2 stitches to finish the single crochet stitch in the new color. Then to tighten down the stitch, I'm going to pull the brown tail of our old color, and then while holding onto my working yarn, I'm going to pull the pink tail of our new color to tighten it down. And then for round 14, which is our first round of the new color, we're going to just be continuing our increasing pattern, starting with 2 single crochet stitches, one in the first 2 stitches of the round. But we also need to work in the tails of our color change for the first couple of stitches. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and start tensioning our new pink yarn, and then hold these 2 tails behind our work so that we can get both the stitch and the tails, sort of like what we did with the magic ring at the very beginning, So I'll start by placing my first single crochet stitch. I'm going to go underneath the first stitch of the round, and then make sure I have those two tails laid over my hook as well. Then I'll make my single crochet stitch like normally by yarning under and drawing up a loop, and then yarning over and drawing through both. I also need to mark that stitch, even though it's pretty obvious since it's the first stitch in a new color. I'm going to put my stitch marker in. Then we're going to make our next stitch another single crochet stitch. Again, working in the stitch and with the tails over our hook. Yarn under and draw up a loop. Then yarn over and draw through both. And then we've worked these two tails in for 2 stitches, so they're pretty much locked in place. I'm going to just take them, twist them together, and put them inside of my ice cream cone so they stay out of my way. And our next stitch is an increase, so just 2 single crochet stitches in the same place. And that's 1 repetition of those parentheses. We need to repeat that another 8 times for a total of 9 repetitions until we're all the way around. Alright, so that's round 14 done and ready to start round 15. But before we do, we need to learn a new kind of stitch. So far we've been working through both sides of our crochet stitch, both the front and back. But now we need to start working through just the back loops. So before, we've been taking our hook and going underneath both sides of our loop here. You can see I've got it here on my embroidery needle. That's the front and back loop just straight under like how we've been working. The stitches actually have 2 loops. This one here is the front loop, which is usually abbreviated FLO, and this one here is the back loop, usually abbreviated BLO. So for this round, which is round 15, we need to work single crochet stitches in all of the back loops of the stitches from round 14. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out, and I'm going to place my first single crochet stitch in the back loop only of my first stitch. So I'm going to take my hook and only grab that back loop. This one here closest to the inside of our work. And I'll yarn under and make my single crochet stitch just like I would normally. And then of course mark that stitch. So we're going to continue working around only in those back loops. And you'll see it leaves the front loop behind, which is good because we're going to come back and add something to those loops later on in our pattern. So we'll just keep adding 1 single crochet stitch to each of the back loops until we are all the way around. Alright, so that's round 15 done. So for rounds 16 through 21, we're going to be working back in the regular loop, so front and back loop. I'm just going to be placing 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. So I'm going to see you back here whenever I have finished round 21 of just 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch. So I'll catch you back here whenever I have finished. Alright, so I have just wrapped up round 21 and I'm getting ready to move on to round 22, where we're going to start off by placing 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. And now we have a new instruction called a DEC, or a decrease. So to do a decrease, we're going to go through our next stitch just like we normally would. So from front to back, we're going to yarn under and then draw up our loop. And then we're going to do that exact same thing in the next stitch. So we're going to go through our next stitch, yarn under, and draw up a loop. And then to finish our decrease, we're going to yarn over and draw through all 3 loops left on our hook. And that takes 2 stitches and makes it so they come together into 1 stitch. So we're going to repeat that pattern of 4 single crochet and then decrease, another 5 times total for a total of 6, all the way around. Alright, that wraps up round 22, so I'm ready for round 23, where I'm going to put one single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. And then decrease. And then repeat that pattern another 5 times for a total of 6 repetitions all the way around. Okay, so for round 24, we're going to start by placing one single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then we're going to decrease. And then repeat that sequence 5 more times for a total of 6 all the way around. Alright, so before we move on to round 25, I actually like to stuff the cone here because I find it's hard to get stuffing inside of the opening as it gets smaller. So I'm going to pull my hook up, so that loop that's on it, I'm going to just pull it long. And then I'm going to grab some stuffing and really just focus on stuffing the cone of our ice cream cone. So I'm going to start off with just a pinch of stuffing and push it directly down into the very point of the cone. And have to make sure that you push all the way down to that point. Then I'll take another handful and I'll go through and stuff into the cone itself, just to make sure it's easy to stuff as we go. Alright, then I'm going to take one more handful and start stuffing the ice cream itself. I'll add more stuffing as we go. It's just nice to put some in now to get started. Alright, so we are ready to continue on with round 25. So I'm going to reinsert my hook into that stitch we pulled up long, and then pull that stitch down. And then for round 25, we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then a decrease. Then we're going to repeat that same pattern 5 more times for a total of 6 until we are all the way around. Alright, so we are ready for our last round, which is round 26, where we're just going to decrease in every stitch all the way around. Alright, so that wraps up the crochet of the ice cream cone. So next we're going to fasten off by slip stitching to the first stitch of round 26. So to slip stitch, all we need to do is go through our next stitch, and then yarn under like we normally would. And then we're going to just draw that loop directly through the loop on our hook. Then we can cut a tail, 6 inches or so, so cut your working yarn. And then we're going to take that last slip stitch on our hook and we're going to pull it until it comes all the way out. And then tighten that slip stitch down by pulling our working yarn until it forms a knot. Then we're going to take a little bit more stuffing and add it to the inside of the ice cream here. So grab just a pinch. Alright, and then we are ready to close off the top of our ice cream cone by taking the working yarn, the stuff that we've cut, and we're going to thread it through the eye of a yarn needle. And then to close off, we're going to sew through the front loop only of the last 6 stitches of the last round. So the front loop, remember, is the one that's closest to the surface. We're going to grab just that one and whip stitch in each of them all the way around. Once you've sewn in all 6 of those stitches, you can pull your yarn to cinch them closed. And then we're going to fasten off all the way by tying a surface knot. So I like to take my working yarn and make a loop on the surface of my work. Then also through just a little bit of the fabric and then up into that loop that we formed. And then just pull, holding that loop close to the fabric until it ties a knot. Then we can weave this tail in by sending it just into the body of the ice cream cone and then out through a couple of rows down and away. Then you can unthread your tapestry needle, and pulling that tail tight, you can cut close to the fabric of the ice cream, which weaves the tail in. Alright, so that's the cone. Next up, let's add the little ruffle here on the bottom. Alright, so next up, let's go ahead and add the ruffle onto the bottom of our ice cream cone. So we're going to start by flipping our cone upside down, and then we're going to take our hook and insert it into one of those loops left behind from when we were crocheting the ice cream. So just from under to the top. And then in that same color we made our ice cream cone out of, I'm using this pink color, we're going to go ahead and wrap that yarn around our hook and then pull up to fasten on. Then we're going to want to weave this tail in as we go, so I kind of swing it over to the left and I begin tensioning my yarn. And we're going to go ahead and just put one single crochet stitch in each of the front loops that we left behind from that round in the ice cream cone. So we also want to work in that tail, so like we did with our color change and magic ring, we're going to slip underneath that loop. And then we're also going to put that tail over our hook. And then we're ready to yarn under and draw up a loop. Then yarn over and draw through 2. And we're just going to continue working around, going into the next loop, yarning under and drawing up, yarning over and drawing through. I'm going to weave my tail in one more stitch and then cut it. So go through my next, yarn under, draw up a loop, yarn over. Then I'm going to trim this tail because I've woven it in for 3 stitches. And I'm going to continue working around, putting one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, so I am all the way around and I'm ready to fasten off. So I'm going to slip stitch to that first stitch that I made. And then cut a medium tail, maybe 6 inches or so. And just like with the top of the ice cream cone, we're going to pull that tail until it's all the way out, and then tighten down by tugging on that tail again. And then we're going to weave this tail in by threading it through the eye of our tapestry needle. And then I'm going to sew down into the fabric of the little ruffle that we've made, so just a straight stitch down through to bring my tail to the underside. And then I'm just going to send it into the ice cream cone itself and out through the other side. It doesn't really matter where. Then I'll unthread my tapestry needle, and by pulling that tail tight, I'll cut it close to the cone and discard any excess. Alright, that wraps up the ice cream cone's skirt. Alright, next we're going to make the ice cream cone's cheeks. So I'm going to go ahead and begin by using this yellow yarn, tying another magic ring. Alright, and once you have your magic ring formed, we're going to place 5 single crochet stitches inside. So again, remember working over both the ring and the tail. Okay, when you've got your 5 single crochet stitches placed, we're going to pull that tail and then slip stitch to the first stitch that we put in that magic ring. And that is the cheek, so we can cut a long tail. We're going to use that to attach the cheek onto the ice cream's face. And then I like to pull both the tail and the magic ring tail through this last slip knot, So I'm going to take my hook and grab both of those tails, drag it straight through, and just keep pulling until they're both through, and then tighten each tail separately. Alright, so that's the first cheek. Let's make one more of these and then get them attached to the ice cream. Alright, so I have both of the cheeks complete and I am ready to attach them to my ice cream. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my ice cream cone. And then I like to use the shorter tail from the magic ring to sort of anchor the cheek on. So I'm going to thread that shorter tail through my tapestry needle. And then I'm going to place it here on my ice cream cone, kind of centered in pretty much dead center on the ice cream itself. And I'm just going to send that tail really close to where the little cheek is, straight into the fabric of the ice cream, and then just out through a random spot. That weaves the tail in and then also holds the cheek in place so I don't have to pin it. So I'm going to repeat that on the other cheek here. Take that shorter tail, then I'm going to thread my tapestry needle with the longer tail that we cut, and I'm going to use that to sew the cheek to the ice cream itself. So I'm going to sew underneath the next stitch on my cheek into the body, like into the fabric of the ice cream, and then up into the cheek. Then I'll sew down through the cheek and into the fabric of the ice cream. And I'll just continue around in this way, attaching the cheek to the ice cream. Alright, so once you've sewn all the way around on the cheek, we're going to tie a surface knot. Make sure you're tying it on the fabric of the cheek itself. So we'll make that loop just like we did before. And then we're going to weave this tail in by sewing down into the cheek, and then just out through a random spot in the body. And then we can cut the tail from the magic ring and from the cheek. And that attaches our cheek to the ice cream. So we need to repeat the same process here on the other side. Alright, so that wraps up the cheeks. Next, let's get the face embroidered on. So we're going to need some black embroidery floss and a embroidery needle. Alright, so I have my embroidery needle and I went ahead and threaded it with my black embroidery floss and then tied a knot here at the very end. So we're going to start off by sewing the smile of the ice cream. So I'm going to kind of lift up the little skirt here on the cone and send my embroidery needle into the space between a stitch, because the idea is to get this knot here on the end to hide inside. And I'm going to sew up so that I am centered in between the two cheeks here. So pulling tightly, it's going to send the knot from my embroidery floss to the inside. Then I'm going to sew the outside corner of the left side of the mouth first by just going down over that row and kind of at an angle. I'm going to repeat here on the other side, sewing up to the top of that row. I'm going to repeat that same shape here on this side. And I'm going to send my needle so that it comes out of the same place the bottom of the mouth is on this side. And then I'm going to sew a long straight stitch to connect the two sides of the mouth. And I'm going to prep myself to sew the left eye first by coming up above, but 2 rounds above kind of where the left side of the mouth is. So there's the mouth complete. So then let's sew the eyes next. So I'm going to sew a straight stitch, just 1 stitch over. And as I sew that stitch, I'm going to want to come back up above, so in the round above where that eye is. So I'm going to sew up through that round. And I'm going to use this stitch here to kind of hold that loop. So I'm kind of threading it so that it's holding that loop up, just like this. I'm going to sew back down through that same stitch I came up through, which is going to hold the ice cream cone's eye into that shape. Let's do that on the other side here. So again, centering the eye with the mouth. And you see that'll hold the eye in the shape that we want it to be. I'm going to sew one stitch over and then come up, of course, just above the eye. And then I'm going to send my needle underneath that straight stitch and then use this stitch to kind of pull that one up. And then sew back down through that same stitch, and then send your tapestry needle down underneath the skirt of the ice cream. So you can see that keeps the ice cream cone's eyes the shape that we want them to be. Then I'm going to loop my embroidery floss and tie a surface knot here. And then weave that tail in just like all the tails that we've woven in so far. Then you can unthread your tapestry needle or your embroidery needle. And then we're going to trim both the tail from the knot on our embroidery floss and here on the other side. Alright, so that's the face added. Alright, so next up we're going to start in on the whipped cream. So again, we need to form a magic ring with this white yarn. Then when we have that magic ring formed, for round 1 we're going to place 6 single crochet stitches inside. And remember, we want to mark that first stitch. When you have all 6 stitches placed in your magic ring, we'll pull the tail. And we're ready to start in on round 2, where we're going to increase in every stitch all the way around. Alright, so before we move on to round 3, let's give that magic ring tail one final tug, and then of course give it a trim. Not all the way off, just short, to keep it out of our way. Then we're ready for round 3, where we're going to start our first parentheses increasing pattern, putting 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round, and then an increase in the next. Then we're going to repeat that sequence 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions all the way around. Alright, that wraps up round 3. I'm ready for round 4, where I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then increase. And then repeat that sequence another 5 times for a total of 6 all the way around. Alright, so we're ready for round 5. We'll start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. Then we're going to increase the next stitch. And then we've got our next parentheses that we need to repeat. We're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches. Then follow that with an increase. And then we're going to repeat that sequence 4 more times for a total of 5 until we are at our last 2 stitches of the round. Alright, I'm at my last 2 stitches. All we need to do is put 1 single crochet in each. And that brings us on to the last round, which is round 6, where we're going to be working in the front loops. So remember how we worked in the back loops on the ice cream cone by slipping through and only getting that back stitch? Now we're going to do that same thing, but we're going to be getting just the front stitch instead. So we'll take our marker out, and then in each front loop, we're going to add 3 single crochet stitches. So that's 3 single crochet stitches in the same front loop all the way around. So we'll start by just grabbing the front loop and making our first single crochet stitch, and of course marking that as it is the first. Then we're going to add 2 more single crochet stitches to that front loop. Then we're going to keep repeating that pattern of 3 single crochet stitches in each front loop until we are all the way around. So I will see you back here whenever I have finished adding all 3 single crochet stitches to every front loop. But before I go, I wanted to point out, and you can see it's already happening on mine, this is going to create kind of a ruffle, which is what we want. We want this whipped cream to have sort of a ruffly, melty kind of look. So if it's already ruffling for you, that's exactly how we want it to look. Alright, I'll see you back here whenever I am finished adding all 3 single crochet stitches to every front loop. Alright, so I have finished putting 3 single crochet stitches in the front loops of the whipped cream, and you can see it's got this really ruffly edge. It also left these loops behind on the back, which is what we want. And we're ready to go ahead and fasten off. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out. Then I'm going to go through that first stitch and slip stitch. And then cut a long tail, maybe 10 inches. And then we're going to pull that tail through that last slip stitch that we made till it comes all the way out. And then, of course, tighten it down. Then we're going to attach this whipped cream by sewing it through these back loops that were left behind with the tail to the top of our ice cream cone's head. So first, let's go ahead and thread the tail left over from when we fastened off through our tapestry needle. And then I'm going to send my yarn down so that it's attached to those back loops by just sewing inside of those stitches until I come up through a back loop. Just gets it set up so it's in the right place. And then I'm going to attach the whipped cream to my ice cream cone's head right at the very top by taking the back loop and then sewing through one of the stitches on the fabric of the ice cream cone itself. And I'm just going to keep grabbing those back loops and just sewing around, attaching it to the head of the ice cream cone. A quick note, you don't have to grab every single back loop. I'm actually skipping 2 or 3 in between each stitch that I sew. So I'm just going to keep sewing around. Alright, once you've gone all the way around and have attached the whipped cream to the top, we can go ahead and tie another surface knot. So again, just looping our yarn over the surface of our work, sewing up through that loop, and tightening it into a knot. And then we can weave this tail in by sewing it down into the ice cream cone, out through a random place. Unthread your tapestry needle once you've got it woven in, and then trim it close to the fabric of the ice cream cone. Discard any tail you didn't need. And that is the whipped cream attached. Alright, last, let's make the cherry on the top of our ice cream cone. I'm going to be using this red color here, and we're going to begin by, of course, forming another magic ring. Then when you have your magic ring formed, we're going to place 6 single crochet stitches inside of our magic ring for round 1. Don't forget you want to mark that first stitch. Always mark that first stitch. Once you have your first 6 single crochet stitches, you can pull the magic ring tail to close off round 1, which sets us up for round 2, where we're going to increase in every stitch all the way around. So before we move on to round 3, just like before, we're going to tighten that magic ring tail one last time, then trim it close to the surface of the work, but not all the way off. Discard any extra. And we're ready to move on to round 3, where all we need to do is put 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 12 stitches from round 2. Alright, that's round 3. And then for round 4, which is our last round of the cherry, we're going to decrease in every stitch all the way around. Alright, so that's my last decrease. I'm ready to fasten off. I'm going to take my stitch marker out and slip stitch to the stitch that it was just in. Then I'll cut myself a tail for sewing 6 inches or so. Then pull that last slip stitch all the way through to fasten off. Then I'm going to tighten down that last stitch by pulling our working yarn. And then if you want, you can add a little stuffing to the inside of the cherry. I think I'm going to add just a little pinch. And then we're ready to attach the cherry to the ice cream cone's head. First, we're going to go ahead and take that working yarn that we cut the tail with and thread it through our tapestry needle. And then we're going to attach it to our ice cream cone's head. You can kind of attach it wherever you like. If you want it to be dead center, you can. You can also attach it kind of off to the side. I'm going to put mine off to the side. So to attach, we're going to take our tail that we threaded through our tapestry needle, go through some of the fabric of the whipped cream, and then up through one of the 6 stitches left on the bottom of the cherry. And then we're just going to keep working our way around, sewing through all 6 of those stitches. Alright, so once you've sewn through all 6 of those stitches, we can fasten off by tying a surface knot onto the cherry itself. So loop your thread over, sew up through that loop. And then I'm going to weave the cherry's tail into the ice cream cone underneath where the cherry attaches, and then just out through a random spot. And then if you'd like, you can add beads to the top of your ice cream cone. So you can use pony beads, or you can use plastic beads, or whatever kind of bead that you'd like for sprinkles. However, I'm going to be giving mine to a young child, so I don't want to attach anything that they can pull off and potentially harm them. So that wraps up Isabella the Ice Cream Cone's tutorial.